think of the things that you remember from childhood, right? You probably remember the songs you sang, right? And some of the nursery rhymes that you learned, because they rhyme, they're memorable, right?
Welcome to You May Contribute a Verse. I'm Brenna Jeanneret, rock climber, mom, and kidlit author of The Law of Birthdays, illustrated by Marina Kondra. I'm joined by my co-host Josh Monken, dad, kidlit author, and science communicator, and podcast wizard Jon Seymour, author-illustrator of A Morning with Blueberry. This episode is proudly presented by Canadian children's book publisher Tealmore Press, where every book sold supports reforestation. Check out Tealmore's full catalog at tealmorepress.com, including titles like Naked, Supermoon, and newly released Fungi Are More Than Mushrooms, written by Alicia Gabriel and illustrated by Vivian Sarkny. This nonfiction title will fascinate kids and adults alike. Make sure to order yours today. And that was today's guest, picture book author Carrie Finison, discussing how and why rhyme is so effective in children's books. As long as you do it right, that is. Make sure to check out her newest release, Pigs Dig a Road, illustrated by Brian Biggs, to see her incredible rhyming skills in action. We chat about Carrie's start with Baby Bug magazine and writing short snippets, Latin scansion of all things, and how rhyme has ruined radio for her. We also dove into the Rutgers conference, and Carrie was kind enough to share the intro to the piece that got her agent, along with its query letter. Here's Carrie's verse. Anyways, Carrie, let's talk about your books. I'm so excited for you to come on the podcast. Like, we're big fan of your stuff in our house, so I am really excited
thank you.
to talk to you about your stuff.
And I've been listening to the podcast quite a bit because I've been trying to get out and walk more. So I'm like, I need podcasts to listen to, and
Oh, awesome!
It's nice to have something to entertain me while I'm on my little walks about town. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in.
I mean, let's talk about how you got started, because it has been. I mean, you have like a pretty good list of stuff out in the world, but I mean, I love to dig into that because it's not like you just appeared and like got all these deals, I think our listeners especially love to hear like how that started, like how you got to this place.
Right. Like the origins.
Totally. Yeah. How did you get your powers?
So, I was kind of a big reader growing up. I listed, writing and editing as one of my skills, and I ended up at this organization. It was a nonprofit that was creating a curriculum, like a social studies-based curriculum, but it was literature-based. So they would basically find children's books that fit with certain themes or topics that they were teaching for K-5. And then write like lesson plans around that. So I started working there as an editorial assistant. And that was kind of the first, time that I had looked at really children's books since I was a child reading children's books, And so I worked there for about 3 years. And then we actually moved back to Massachusetts. And I started working for a software company, an educational software company. So I kind of took those editorial skills and writing skills and started using them in a more of a technology-based environment. But this was like 1997 or 8, so it was still like pretty low-tech technology. It wasn't like, It
was the best they could do at the time,
It was the best
Carrie.
they could do at the time. It really was. No, they had some great products, and it was like just such a creative, fun environment to work in. And actually, Peter Reynolds was the art director at this company, like right before I started there. So he left maybe like a couple months before I started, but like his artwork was all over the products, like all over the walls of the office and everything. And he left to start Fablevision. I worked there for about 10 years, and it was like a very creative job. And the company, it was called Tom Snyder Productions. They actually were bought by Scholastic while I was there. So part of Scholastic for like the last few years that I was there, which was really fun. And it was sort of in the middle of the whole Harry Potter thing. So one of the things they would do is like give us I think it was when maybe the fourth book was coming out. So they like sent every employee like a copy of the fourth or the fifth book or whichever it was. And then they had like screenings of the movies for the employees and stuff like that. So that was really fun too.
That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really fun job. And so then, let's see, I became pregnant with my son and decided to leave that job and stay home with him for a little while and like figure out what I was going to do. And then that's finally when I started thinking about like, oh, maybe I should like work on some writing of my own that's like not assigned to me, you know? And I think it was that thought combined with, you know, at that point, my son was like maybe 1 or 2, 3, and we were just reading like tons of picture books. He also had my mother-in-law had given us a subscription to Baby Bug magazine, which is like this cute little, you know, it's like Cricket, but for babies. And so we were reading that a lot and just, you know, spending a lot of time in the children's book space. And I was kind of like rediscovering my old favorites, but also reading like lots and lots of new books that I'd never heard of before, right before having a kid. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I could write this, you know, especially the baby bug stuff. So that's really where I started, was with writing for those magazines, children's magazines. And one, I think, reason was because it was like short enough. The pieces were short enough that I actually just thought about them in my head as we were like walking around with the stroller and stuff like that. And I would think about it, and I would like bring paper or whatever and like write it down when we got home. And so I kind of started like just with these short little, usually rhyming poems and stories, and started like trying to submit them, like figured out that whole thing, which is completely, at that point, now I think they use Submittable or some like, you know, online thing. But at that point it was still like, send us a letter with a SAS.
Yeah, right.
Self-addressed stamped envelope.
Again, they were doing the best they could at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Wait, can I just ask really quick? So did you just were rhyming just because, you know, that's where it took you? Or did you have a background in rhyme? Like, did you know how to use meter? And I'm only asking because a lot of guests, including Josh and I, who are not guests, but like our sort of intro into Kidlit is like, I'm going to write our rhyming manuscript because that's what kids' books do. But we had no business rhyming. So I just yes. wanted to.
I also had no business rhyming, really. I think that the only really advantages that I had were I had taken Latin in high school, and part of Latin was, at least the way my teacher taught it, was we had to learn scansion. So we had to actually learn how to scan the phrases
that's
in
really
Latin.
Helpful, I think.
It was helpful. So like now I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, that actually, now I'm using that a lot. I use it all the time.
Totally.
Right. But at the time I was like, oh my God, like how many lines of the Aeneid do I have to scan tonight? You know,
right. And you're like, this is never going to help me. I'm never going to use this ever.
Exactly. When will I ever use this? Right. And here I am using it. Right. So thank you to Mr. Esposito.
I'll make sure to take him in the show notes.
Begrudging appreciation.
To Virgil. So that helped. And then I think that I just, you know, have like somewhat of a natural good ear for rhyme. I don't know that it's like better than other people's, but I have to say, like, the thing that really helped me, so I kind of started working on stuff on my own and like submitting it and stuff like that. And I did get some good responses and a couple of acceptances, although it still took like a couple years for it to get even an acceptance, you know. But at one point I was on a message board that now is the SCBWI like message board, but before that, it was like this independent thing called the Blue Boards.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of where writers like gathered at that point. because there really wasn't even Facebook at that point. I mean, maybe it existed, but like I wasn't on it, you know?
Right.
So this message board was very active, and Diana Marie, who's an amazing rhymer, posted on this message board that there was an opening in her like rhyming children's poetry group. And so send an application, you know, blah, blah. They were going to review applications. And so I sent in an application and was accepted into that group, which is called, it still exists, the Poets Garage.
Well, I love that it still is a thing. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. And
just to pull that apart, that is essentially a critique group.
It is. It's like a bulletin board based critique group. So you post things, people come along and critique it. It's not a huge group, but there's maybe, I don't know, 20, 25 people in it, maybe 20.
Oh, okay. So big enough to necessitate legitimizing it with like an application process.
Yes.
Because my frame of reference is, 7 to 10 people forming a critique group. It seems like a lot to go through an application.
Right. Well, so, and I was super
people.
lucky. I feel like I was super lucky to get into that group because there were people in the group who knew way more than me about scansion, about rhyming, about meter, and about storytelling. And so that was just amazingly helpful to like get feedback from those people. And that started me actually like really improving what I was able to do with rhyme. And so like I think most of the early manuscripts that I wrote were in rhyme. I had a few ones that were in prose, but yeah, mostly they were in rhyme. Now I'm trying to do like 50-50 because I don't want to be sort of pigeonholed as like somebody who only writes in rhyme, you know? But I don't know. So
it is so, because I mean, my first critique group I also found through SCBWI for like a posting. And like I mentioned, I started out rhyming, even though I am not a rhymer. I didn't have any background. I just was like, oh, that's what kids' books do. They rhyme, so I'm going to rhyme. So I got into this like rhyming critique group who I still, every once in a while will share stuff. But yeah, it was so helpful to have somebody who knew what they were actually doing. Like, this handful of women were like, oh yeah, like we totally rhyme and whatever. And I sent them my piece and they were like, you might want to scan this again. And like, here's an example of like, how this might look. And just like, here's some resources. And I was like, oh God, thank you. Because I'm so glad, that you stopped me from like doing, going any further with this in terms of submitting or whatever, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, it is, you need someone like that, or you need to take a class or something. There's so much to learn about it. Like, I'm still learning, honestly. There's like things I don't know, like why something works or why it doesn't work. So it's sort of an endless process, but it's also like, I find it really fun to write in rhyme, and I hope it's fun to read too. So, that's, I think, why a lot of people like want to write in rhyme is they think it's, like you said, like the way children's books are supposed to sound, So, and some of the really great ones are in rhyme, so.
Yeah, and they're great when they're done right.
Exactly.
You have to be dedicated to your craft in a different way.
Yes, you do.
Do you it puts me in mind of the maxim, parable, not euphemism. I don't know what the word is, but the saying like, surround yourself with people who are better than you to help improve yourself. I mean, what it sounds like is you're attributing how you sort of ramped up into this space to the fact that you had this opportunity to spend all this time and get eyes on people that really, really knew what they were doing.
Yes. I think that was incredibly helpful. And, I mean, I think also I did have another critique group that was actually from the very first year of 12 by 12, Julie Headland's, challenge. So the first year of that, she also actually, this same message board, she had posted in the message board, hey, I'm gonna do this thing, right, which is to write 12 manuscripts this year in 2012. Anybody want to join? And I think there were like maybe 300 or 400 people that said yes. And so it might have been a little bit less than that, but it was like way more than she thought it was going to be. And so she, you know, the first year, it was really just her kind of posting on her blog and then a Facebook group. And that's actually the reason why I joined Facebook, was to be a part of that Facebook
that's really
group.
Funny.
I know. And so, and then that's how I met my critique group that I'm still with now. So we all were pretty much beginners, too. And that's been helpful too. I think it's helpful to like grow up with a group, you know, and kind of all grow into your writing. I always find it unbelievably helpful to like critique other people's manuscripts and think about, you know, what isn't working for me and why, because a lot of times it gives me ideas about like, oh, you know what, I did that in my manuscript, maybe I should change it. Or, oh, I really liked what this person did with this story, like, let me add it to mine, you know. Or even just the inspiration of seeing how other people revise and like how drastically sometimes a manuscript changes from first draft to like, you know, a later draft. It's pretty amazing. So, but yeah, for rhyme, I think you need some input into what you're doing, I think, to help you.
And to have the way that you read it in your head sort of validated by other people.
Right. Validated or contradicted, right? Because sometimes the way you're reading it in your head is like
I don't pronounce
not
that word
the
that
way
way.
other people are going to read it. And that's the whole thing with writing in rhyme, especially for picture books, is you want to be fairly certain that most people who read it are going to read it the same way. And the only way to really know that is to give it to lots of people to read.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, have them read it by themselves and tell you where they stumbled, or have them read it out loud to you so you can kind of hear where they pause or hesitate or, you know, get the rhythm wrong.
You can tell them where they're reading it incorrectly.
Exactly. Like, you didn't say that right. That's not how it was supposed to go.
With an East Coast accent, like this, you know, this is from Boston, so it has to be wicked.
Oh my gosh, I have like certain words. So like you know, like the word oil. To me, that is 2 syllables, right? Yeah. Oil. That is 2 syllables. But like technically, everyone else, not everyone, but like lots of people think that's just 1 syllable. Oil. I don't even know how they say it. I really don't.
You have to drop some, like a sound in there or something. You have to just skip the I feel like.
Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, those kinds of words just, they mess me up, man.
Yeah. No, totally.
Can I share I have a funny anecdote about reading in rhyme and hearing in rhyme. My kids are 10 and 7, and they're very into Taylor Swift. We're having a real Taylor Swift moment right now.
Amazing.
I can't remember if I try to trigger a thought or a memory in myself, immediately it flies out of my head, and I can't remember the name of the song. But there's a line in one of her songs that says, "Let the games begin." But the way that she says the line, it's "let the games begin." The emphasis is really weird, and my family hears it as the nuggets we get. So it's now a song about chicken nuggets instead of.
Oh my gosh!
So yes, all I'm doing is emphasizing your point.
That's
that
so funny.
We hear and experience
Yes.
rhyme in a very sort of individual way.
Well, the funny thing is, when I listen to music, sometimes I get so insanely like jealous of songwriters, because most songs don't have like perfect rhyme, right? A lot of times they rhyme like they get like the vowel
murder.
Sound is the same, but the consonants are different or something like that. And I'm like in the car driving, I'm like, what, that doesn't really rhyme. You know, like, why can't we get away with that? You know, or they'll cram like 12 syllables into like one little I don't know, bar of music, and then like they have so much more control over how how their words are delivered, right, through a singer, whereas, you know, we are like basically handing something to someone else, a stranger, to read to their child, and we can't hover over their shoulder and say like, now put the emphasis here on the for, right?
Totally.
Like that just doesn't work. So sometimes I wish I could, but
15 pages of back matter on how exactly to read this.
And an audio or like a read along, like whatever, to like, this is how you should say it. If you're having trouble, just follow along with this.
I sometimes think about if there are ways to unlock memorability in picture book manuscripts in the same way that say like Pout Pout Fish. Everybody knows the Pout Pout Fish. It's got a rhyming refrain. It's classic, and it probably would undergo drastic changes if it were to be published new today. But it's one of those things that's it's very memorable. It's very song-like in the way that it repeats rhyme, but it doesn't. It's got a kind of a song and verse structure that I find fascinating, and is not really repeated particularly often. I don't know if I have a question there. I reflect on that.
Yeah, and I think the thing about rhyme is it is very memorable, right? I mean, there's definitely prose books that have memorable lines, like I'm thinking of like Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, right? Like people kind of use that and it becomes part of their lexicon or whatever. But I think that especially for kids reading rhyming books, they can remember those lines. They can kind of anticipate them and recite along with them. And, I mean, think of the things that you remember from childhood, right? You probably remember the songs you sang, right? And some of the nursery rhymes that you learned, because they rhyme, they're memorable, right? I mean, even the alphabet song, right? Like the alphabet song stops where it does because it rhymes, right? Yeah. So it's just, there's something about our brains, I think, that's sort of keyed into that. And, if you can take advantage of that as a writer, I think that's a great thing. But the thing about a book like the Pout Pout Fish and also like the Gruffalo is it has a very unique structure in terms of rhyming. It's not, you're not going to open up another book and find that exact same rhyme scheme and structure because, the authors kind of created it for the book and it worked for the book. Or another one is like Bear Snores On, which has a very like, at the last line is like the bear snores on, and that sort of creates this moment in the story that is different from other rhyming books. So maybe that's why they're super successful.
It's a much more, it's a very engineered structure, not in a story way, but in a readability, memorability sort of, or orient the reader kind of a way.
Yeah.
Can we back up? So you got onto Facebook and you were doing 12 by 12 and you got your critique group. But then, so what was the journey like from there to like publication and like agent stuff? Like how long did it take? And like, what did that look like, I guess, back in the low tech days?
Yes. I know. Querying has always been really hard, right? And it wasn't even that long ago that I was querying, but things have changed a lot. Like I never used Query Manager at all, right? I mean, it definitely existed and some agents were using it, but I didn't use it. And the agents I was querying were, it was just an email. So,
okay. Yeah.
So, so 12 by 12, I had joined 12 by 12. So I had that critique group. I also took like an in-person class that was taught sort of here in town. And then I took some online there was like not very many online classes at that point. There's been this like huge explosion in sort of writer education stuff, in the last, since I started. So at that time, there was a class by Anastasia Suen. I took that class. And then I took, Susanna Hill had started her class. So I took that class. And I think that was like all the classes that there were to take. I'm pretty sure. So, and then I also would go to like the SCBWI conferences. So New England was a fairly big conference. But I remember the first time I went, I did not know one single person, and I met two people, and we all kind of hung out together. And then the second year that I went, I knew like those two people, and I met like two more people, And now, when I go to these conferences, it's like what you were saying before, like it's this big reunion pretty much, because all these people from seeing them in person and also online and stuff. But so I had started querying agents in probably 2013, maybe 2012. Might have been about 2012, yeah. And I actually got an agent, like, in hindsight, relatively quickly, although it didn't feel quickly at the time. But it was relatively quickly, and but she unfortunately left agenting like not too long after we had started. And I'm trying to think if she had even sent anything of mine
through no fault of your own.
Yeah, it was just for medical reasons. So, and then I ended up with another agent at the same agency, and that turned out to like not really be a good fit at all, because she was very focused on YA and like selling tons of YA at the time.
Oh, shoot.
So it was tough, because she just, I mean, it's a business, so she had to kind of go where she was having success and where the money was, and it wasn't at that moment in picture book sales.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's still not in picture book sales.
It's not really ever been in picture book sales.
Nothing has changed, right? But, right, so at a certain point, I decided, you know what, she's focused on this. I need someone who's like willing to really push forward with these picture books. At the same time, I won the Barbara Carlin SCBWI scholarship, with a rhyming manuscript. So that was great. So I actually used that manuscript to query more agents.
Yeah, smart.
So that was good. And then my current agent is Linda Epstein at Emerald City Literary.
Yeah.
At the time when I got her, she was with Jennifer De Chiara, but then she left to start Emerald City with another agent. But she wasn't really on my radar screen, but then I went to the Rutgers one-on-one conference, which, if anyone doesn't know about it, it's really an amazing conference. It's like one day at Rutgers University, and like 80 writers go, and 80 editors, agents, and very accomplished authors go, and you get paired with each other. So you get paired with an agent or an editor or an author. It's an application process to get into this conference. So it has a very different feel from other conferences that I've been to, because I feel like at some conferences, the editors and the agents are like, they don't want to be approached, right, necessarily, or they just get, not that they don't want to be, but they just feel like they're going to get inundated,
It's so much. Yeah, like,
it's a lot.
I get. Like, that's fair. It's almost like you're this, like, mini celebrity, and you're just being like thrown into the crowd. Like, go ahead, everybody, like, go and approach them, pitch them all your stuff. And you're just like, really? I don't know if they want this. Like,
they don't.
Right?
I don't think they do.
Like, yeah,
I mean, they do like meeting people and hearing about stuff, but it can be too much. It's like, it's a sea of sharks, and they're like this one little, guppy or something.
It's a lot.
Like that.
Or like walking onto an overstaffed used car lot.
But Rutgers is kind of different, because, first of all, it's an application process to get in. So they already know that you have something sort of sale worthy, right? And then you get paired with someone, and they're your mentor for the day. And so you have like a sit down with them, like one-on-one sit down for 45 minutes, where you can go over the manuscript that you submitted. They can give you notes on that. You can ask them literally any question. Like with one of mine, I read, I had a bunch of other pitches for other stories, and I just shared the pitches with her, and she gave me comments on all the pitches and what she thought about them. So, and then you have this this contact, right, in the industry. So it's really great. So Linda was not my one-on-one person, but she was. Another part of the day is they put you in a group of 5 writers and 5 like agents or editors, and you have kind of a roundtable conversation. So she was in my 5-on-5 group for this conversation, and I just really liked the answers that she was giving to the questions that people were asking. Like, she was very knowledgeable. Her answers, made sense. They were clear. Like, I mean, things in this industry can be confusing and just downright weird, and it was nice to have like someone who knew what they were talking about. So I was like, oh, okay, I liked her. I'll put her on my list for querying. And then, so I just sent her the story. I think I had already sent it out to some other agents earlier than that. And then I just sent it out to her, and she responded, and she really liked it. So she,
Had you made a personal connection at the conference?
Well, she was in my 5-on-5 group. So,
Yeah, for sure.
we all introduced ourselves and stuff like that. But I didn't really like go and talk to her after that or anything like that. I just decided, I hadn't known about her before, so I put her on the list. And
it's time for this week's book reviews. From Josh. Josh's review for this week is for Little Lion Girl by Olivia Hope, illustrated by Fiona Woodcock. This is one of those small moment stories that works really well. The setting and story are important, but almost take a back seat to the emotional depiction, beautifully illustrated by Fiona Woodcock, in which a little girl lion enters a new situation with a bold and courageous attitude, sticking through it despite a little light adversity. From an author's perspective, this is a good reminder that a story doesn't have to do much to be effective, as long as it can be something relatable and big. From John, Too Much, An Overwhelming Day by Jolene Gutierrez and illustrated by Angel Chang is a thoughtful story navigating sensory overload. With gentle rhymes and bright expressive art by Angel Chang, this story can be a great help to any reader by feeling seen and understood. It's perfect for sparking empathy as well as offering coping tools to anyone who might feel that sometimes the world can be too much. John gives this story 5 blanket hugs out of 5. And my review for this week is A Pinecone by Helen Yoon. The lovable MC from Off Limits is back, and this time she has a fascination with pine cones. While she's busy collecting, imagining, and hoarding pinecone families, her dad is distracted by the family dog. When he finally has a minute to understand what's happening, the dad and reader are delighted by an avalanche of all things pinecones, a must-have for any small collector in your life. Don't forget to get your own reviews and library requests in. It's the #1 way to help an author's sales. It's been a while since we had any community shoutouts to share, but I wanted to give a big fat shout out to friend and Kidlit author Steph Campisi, who is absolutely killing it lately. She has been an invaluable resource as I navigate my own writing career, and she's amazingly talented and prolific to boot. Check out her newest release, Sparkle Pigs, under the pen name Kit Holiday. Seriously, Steph, thank you so much for being just at my disposal all the time to answer all things Kidlit and questions and publishing and contracts. You're amazing. Thank you. Want to give your own community shout out? Check out the link tree for our shoutouts, merch, and our Patreon, or go to BrennaJeanneret.com. And now, back to our show. Well, and that's enough of a, like a personal connection too, to put at the top of a query letter, like, hey, I really enjoyed talking with you at the Rutgers, whatever, and, talking about blah, blah, blah in my 5 months. So, like, That's enough of a thing to, like, ground you to be like, oh, yeah, right, like, I remember Carrie, like, that,
Yes, exactly. I'm sure I put that in my query. I probably did. Actually, I wonder if do I have it?
Oh my gosh, are you going to find your query?
I'm going to look and see if I have it.
So, well, I want to ask something, because you did not do the shotgun blast of, I'm going to look, you said you never used Query Manager or Query Tracker or anything like that. You're not going to send it out to every person that's open on the off chance that you hook an agent. And it sounds like, at least partially you credit the SCBWI scholarship in this conference with your connection with Linda. And I wonder, or what am I trying to extrapolate is this notion of having a personal connection with the agent. It's really hard for people to do, but it sounds like, I mean, that's what made it for you and Linda.
I think so. I mean, I don't know, like if I had queried her without having that, I'm not sure, you know? I mean, no other agent has said yes at that point. Well, I mean, my first agent had, so it wasn't like I hadn't had an agent before, but yes, I mean, I think any little thing like that you have that you can, use is helpful.
Also, regardless of whether or not she was at the conference, I think having something like going to Rutgers because it's application based would have helped, with any agent. You know what I mean? Because like you said, it is application based and you're getting in with something that, has sale potential already. So I think people looking at that regardless would be like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm going to take a good look at this because it's already passed through, whatever filter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but I mean, the whole thing of like, I don't want to say pay to play, but I remember feeling at the time, like, I can't believe I have to spend all this money going to conferences in order to like make these personal connections. Right.
Right.
And I understand the whole system and I get it. And I think it is very helpful. I loved I got so much good feedback on tons of manuscripts by like getting critiques from editors at conferences, so I'm not advocating for like eliminating that helpful thing, but it's difficult to not make it feel like pay to play, right? Like, and in some ways you could say like,
because there has to be a filter. Yeah.
Yeah. There has to be some kind of filter, and this is what they're using as kind of a filter. Right. And, in some ways I feel like it's, if you were starting up any business, you would need to invest some money, right? So it's not really reasonable to expect that you're going to be able to become a writer without investing any money in it at all. Although people can, like some people do, right? And that works. But so, on the one hand, it's not like a shock that it's important to start going to conferences and like meeting people in person. And, I'm lucky that I live on the East Coast. And so, I could get to this Rutgers conference. I could get to the New England SCBWI conference without too much trouble, right? Or expense. But yeah, I definitely had some moments of resentment over the pay to play stuff.
And I mean, granted, it's easy for me to have a strong reaction to this pay to play, which limits, how equitable the industry can be.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Knowing that I am someone who's invested at least a little bit of money and a whole bunch of time in having a platform like this, where we're privileged for very little money to be able to talk to some superstars of the industry. I'm just glad to be able to give back in some little way for those people who maybe don't have as much opportunity to go and take advantage of educational conferences and do stuff like what we're able to experience. So let's go back just a little. So what manuscript did you submit that got Linda? Because this was the one that also got you the scholarship, right? And it was a rhyming manuscript. And then sub question, did that story sell, or did it die?
Right.
Yes, we haven't talked about any of your books specifically. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So the manuscript was called City Street City Feet. And it was about just a kid in the city kind of watching all these feet go by during the day, and the sort of different rhythms that they had.
I like that. That lends itself really well to rhyme, I feel like, right? Because it's got that musicality sort of in it with the different rhythms of feet. That's really smart.
Yeah. So I had worked on, I'm trying to think if I guess I had won the scholarship with it before I applied to the conference. And then at the conference, so my the editor that I was paired with So my mentor, my direct mentor at this Rutgers conference was an editor from Roaring Brook Press, who's no longer there. But she really liked the manuscript, and so she helped me out with it a lot during the conference. And then I think I got Linda as an agent, and then we ended up submitting the manuscript to her and went through like a R&R on it with her. But then it was ultimately rejected, and then it ended up getting rejected pretty much everywhere. And we were both very upset about that. And then ended up submitting maybe 4 or 5 other manuscripts that all were rejected before Dozens of Donuts, which was my first manuscript that was accepted, and then first book that came out. So that was, I think, actually my 5th manuscript that Linda had submitted for me.
Okay.
So that whole process took like a couple years. So Dozens of Donuts, so I signed with Linda maybe 2015, sometime in 2015, I think. And then Dozens of Donuts was sold in the fall of 2017. And that was the 5th manuscript. So it was a long road.
Yeah. So helpful to hear that, as for anybody who's still we're all still in it, but if you're just starting out too, know that it takes time, don't get discouraged, keep going, because it takes a little bit of time. Even though you had, some success with an agent, and then the scholarship and Rutgers and all this stuff, it still took some time. You feel like you're so close, and then it doesn't happen, and you just want to curl up into a ball and be whatever, this industry can go suck it. This is the worst, But but I mean,
it is the worst.
Right? But I love that you persevered, because now you've got this whole bookshelf of books, and it it happens. It just you have to find your voice and what works for you, and the people who are gonna sort of cheerlead along the way and help to encourage and promote. So
yes, exactly. And I think that so when they say you need 3 manuscripts to submit to an agent, you absolutely do. You probably need way more than that, right? Because mine was number 5, and you got to keep writing, right? You can't stop and think I'm just going to sit back and wait and see what happens. No, you gotta keep going. Right. And for me, actually, that is the most helpful part of the process, because I honestly, by the time, I have something out on submission now, and of course I want it to be accepted, and I care about it. But I'm so invested in the new thing that I'm working on, that when I do get rejections on stuff that's out on submission, I'm well, that's not even my best thing. This current thing is my best thing, totally. Right? That was pretty good, but this is much better. Wait till they see this.
Yeah, right. Just you wait, industry.
Just you wait.
Hello.
You didn't like that? I didn't like that anymore.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
But I don't know if it's a self-protective thing, but it does help me to kind of not feel those rejections quite so much, because I'm very invested in what I'm working on right now.
I mean, you have to get to that place, or you just will. It's too much. You need some sort of shield or protection, or something, or you have to be distanced from it in some way, or it's it will kill your spirit.
Right. And it takes so long also. So when I finally hear back on this other thing, 2 or 3 months from now, I'm that is in the rear view mirror. Right. I mean, if it gets accepted, whoop-de-doo, that's great. But if it doesn't, it's so far in my past at that point that I'm okay, well, I'll just keep going.
I think about preciousness, and I feel especially in recent conversations, we talked about being precious about your work a lot. Do you have an okay time? It sounds like the answer is yes, with not abandoning your babies, but being okay with, submitting them out into the world and then saying, okay, that's not working. I'm going to go ahead and bench it, and we won't think about it again. I've moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I do, sometimes I go back to my old manuscripts and I'm like, this was really good. Like, how come nobody wanted this? I don't understand it. You know? So if I look at them, I definitely sort of get a little emotional and like, you know, put out that it didn't get it didn't have a better reception, you know? But yeah, I mean, I do tend to just move on to the next thing, you know, like I think that's the only thing you can do, honestly. Otherwise you'll just you'll curl up in a ball and just cry all the time, you know? You can't have that.
Yeah, right. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. The other thing I have to say that was super helpful was during this whole time when I was like looking for an agent and then getting an agent and then like losing the agent and getting new agent and querying and like stressing about all that stuff. The magazine writing that I had done, right? Because I started with these little short poems for Baby Bug and like High Five and stuff like that. I was still doing some of that, but all of the pieces that I had submitted and gotten accepted were starting to get published, right? So when I was like weeping into my oatmeal about rejections on my picture books, the next day in the mail would come like, oh, here's your contributor copies of, you know, Ladybug with your poem in it. Isn't that nice, right? So that was like incredibly rewarding to kind of see that happening. And get to be getting that validation from, you know, more than just like my critique group, right?
Totally. Yeah.
During that whole process. So that was another like way in which I feel like writing for the magazines really helped me a lot, was to just like boost my ego every once in a while. Because otherwise, you know, it would have been 5 or 6 long years of like,
just like nothing.
You're just not good enough.
No,
you know?
I love that. Like magazines, contests, like all that stuff, like any of that can sort of like get you out of your head for what you're working on and just like try something else, try something new, like do this new genre, or like here are these like weird parameters for this contest, like see what you can come up with. And just like it helps in a lot of ways. And then if you do happen to place or get an honorable mention or whatever, you're like, oh, thank God. Okay. I'm like on the right track. Like it, you know, it's going to take a minute for the picture books. I get it. But like this other stuff, and it's more immediate too. Like it's still not super quick because nothing in writing or publishing is, but at least it's something. It's like, oh, a couple of months. Okay. And then there's this like boost instead of like, you know, like years long stretches. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think contests are great for that too. And like, there's so many, like I said, you know, all of this stuff has kind of come up since I would say about 2012. You know, there's been just this giant explosion in terms of like online engagement for writers, and then like all these contests and classes and, you know, submission opportunities and, you know,
and
Twitter
right?
pitch contests like, and community. And it's really great.
I feel like is the hugest thing, because it's like, yeah, like, you know, we're all taught how to do a good critique, and like, you know, you don't want to give false praise, but you also want to start out with like, hey, this is what you're doing really well. Like this stuff isn't working, but again, like this down here like is amazing, and like keep going, and like I can't wait to see the revisions or whatever, which I think is like the scaffolding for what holds us all together. Like we all need that. We all need each other, because otherwise like this whole thing falls apart. So so like regardless of whether or not you place or like, you know, get that like thing in the mail or whatever, like at least you've got people who are like, no, this is good. Like I read it. Like these things are working. Like, you know, keep going.
I have a question that we might cut out if the answer is no, or if you have hope for this manuscript. But I wonder, I don't think we talked about this via email or anything, but I wonder if you might have City Street, City Feet at hand.
I do, yeah.
And would you want to read it?
You want to hear it?
We do an occasional segment. Yeah, we do an occasional segment, the Dead Manuscript Society. I don't know if you've ever
I have heard
listened to it before.
Only
yes.
Only
but I won't. We won't have you. Yeah. Only if it's benched.
Yeah, every once in a while I'm like, maybe we should try to submit that. But then actually, Linda suggested a couple years ago, she's like, are you sure you don't want me to submit this? And again, like, I feel like maybe it could work. And So, okay, yeah, I can read this. Sure, why not?
Because what if an editor hears it, Carrie, and they're like, yes, we heard it on the Verse show.
Maybe they'll want
You
it.
should be so
Okay.
lucky. That's right.
Good. This is my pitch opportunity,
Yes.
right? Okay. So it's called City Street, City Feet. Busy sidewalk, summer day, friends and neighbors out to play. I climb the rail and hang and wait and watch the world pass by our gate. City street, city feet, stepping to the city beat.
Aww.
That's it. And I have, do you want to hear the query letter?
Yes.
That I sent to Linda?
Yes.
Ooh, yes.
Here's the query letter. So I said, Dear Ms. Epstein, it was a pleasure to meet you at the Rutgers one-on-one conference in October. I appreciated the insights you offered during our 5-on-5 group discussion, especially your advice that writers consider what is at the heart of their books. You mentioned that you enjoy lyrical texts, and I hope you will consider my picture book, City Street, City Feet. This story won the Barbara Carlin Picture Book Writing Grant from SCBWI in 2014. On a summer afternoon, city feet hit the streets. Sneaker feet and furry feet, flip-flop feet and hip-hop feet. Thomas watches them and joins in with the jump, thump, snap, slap, and click-clacking feet outside his gate until he spots the special feet he's been waiting for. In addition to this story, I have several other polished picture book manuscripts, both rhyming and prose, that I'd be happy to share with you. I'm an active member of SCBWI and participated in the Rutgers conference in 2014 and 2015. My published credits include poems and stories in Highlights, High Five, Baby Bug, and Ladybug magazines. Thank you for considering my work. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
I really like how seamless it was, too, that you were like, I did Rutgers with you, and then it also won my scholarship, and then, here's the pitch. Yeah, really well done.
Yeah, I probably spent longer crafting the cover letter than I did on the manuscript.
How it goes. I'm like, what do I put here? I don't know. What?
I
this
know.
sounds stupid
It's
now.
so hard.
Maybe my story sucks because I can't put. I can't put it into words. I thought I was a writer. I'm not a writer. I feel like there's a whole spiral that goes on.
Yes. I write picture books. I don't write query letters. I'm good at one thing. I'm not good at the other
That's why we need agents. That's what we need you for.
You're the letter writer, not me.
Please help me.
Yeah. It's so true. I actually do write. So I still write the pitches for my books. And because I think it's really a helpful exercise. I think Linda would probably write them if I asked her to do it. But I feel like if I can't write a pitch for the story, there's something in the story that's not quite working,
How can you really embody what the heart of your story is?
Exactly. And if I can't articulate that, how is somebody else going to be able to articulate it? And, I heard somebody once saying, the pitch is your first opportunity to sort of start teaching people how to think about your manuscript, and sometimes you'll even see lines or phrases from the pitch go all the way through to the jacket copy of the book or whatever. So I just feel like it is important, and I'm the best advocate for my book, so I want to be able to articulate that.
Totally. And I feel like when I write my own pitch, I usually stumble at the part where I'm trying to describe what the stakes are. And I'm like, oh, if I can't do it, I need to improve the stakes, or I need more attention, or I need to figure something out. So yeah, I agree with you. The pitch is it's just really important for helping to sort of streamline what you're trying to do. And I've also heard it called a log line. This is sort of the heart of what you're going for, right? This is what you want. And I think it's Karen Yin who had said that, the log line, and she'll write it and she puts it at the top of her manuscript as she's writing, and she'll circle back to be wait, what was I saying? Because a picture book has to be so focused and so streamlined that if you get off track even a little, you've lost your reader. So it helps to look at it again and be oh yeah, right, that's why I'm writing this. That's what I'm trying to say. If you take a hard right, it's well, that's another book. Put a pin in that and do something else with that later. But you can't have both. Yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes you'll write the pitch and the pitch will sound amazing, right? And then you go back and you're like, that's not actually what this book does. Maybe I should write the book that I pitched because it's not this. Not a fit for your list. That's the world's worst. And I mean, I get it. Like I have this like analogy in my head that I think about when I'm querying or, have things on submission, which is that it's basically like the editors are like shopping, right? It's like a shopping analogy, right? So they're looking for, the perfect fitting pair of jeans, right? And so, you know how hard it is to find the perfect pair of jeans, right? It's like, it's really difficult. Okay. So they're looking for the perfect pair of jeans. Okay. So maybe you have a pair of jeans, right? And you're trying to like sell them on your pair of jeans, but maybe what you have is like a cool little black dress, right? In which case, right, they might be tempted by that little black dress, but that's not really what they need in their closet right now. What they really need are jeans. Like maybe they already have 2 great black dresses. They don't need a third one. But if it's like a really amazing black dress, maybe they'll be tempted by it and say yes, but like that's not what they needed. So you know what I mean? Like there's just, and if you think about that, and then you think about like, if you were out shopping and someone was like hovering over your shoulder and every time you put something down, the person was like, why did you put that down? Like, what was wrong with it? Aren't these great? It's a beautiful, like, blouse. Like, why didn't you want that blouse? Like, it wasn't what I was looking for,
I'm sorry,
like.
Yeah, your manuscript is too tight in the thigh or something.
It doesn't make my butt look good, okay?
It didn't have pockets, and I really wanted pockets.
Oh my God, pockets and women's clothing. Don't get me started, but yes, I want pockets.
Pockets are great.
Yes.
I mean, that helps me a little, and then, cookies also help a little, so.
Yeah. I want to recontextualize in terms of, I mean, what we're kind of focusing on, which is the spin up of your relationship with Linda. If Dozens of Donuts, well, not if, it was your debut, your first book, but was it part of your full? Because we talked about have 3, but also have more, because those 3 are probably not going to go anywhere. Is this something that Linda had seen at the inception of your relationship, or did it come later?
That is a good question. I don't actually remember. What else did I send her? I don't even know. I don't think that it was, but hold on. I'm going to go back and look and see. When did I write the first draft of Dozens of Donuts? So I sent her City Street. I sent her like a poetry collection that I had been working on, and then I sent her a prose story.
Yeah, so...
And she liked both of those.
Like covering all your bases, yeah.
But yeah, she wanted to go out with City Street first, especially because I had sort of connected with this editor at Roaring Brook and at Rutgers. So, she was like, let's get this together and like get it out there. But yeah, Dozens of Donuts, I just looked at my first draft of that was June of 2015. So she hadn't seen that when I signed with her, because I signed with her, I think in December of 2015, maybe. So, and I was actually surprised. Like, I didn't think Dozens of Donuts was going to be my debut. Like, I just thought it was a cute, fun manuscript. It didn't seem like a debut kind of book, but yeah, so she sent it out and it got a bunch of interest. So that was good, like more than any of the other things that I had sent. And ultimately, Stephanie Pitts is the editor. So she's at Putnam. So she signed it. And then she signed my next book in that contract, there was an option clause. So she got to see my next book before anybody else. And the next thing we sent was Don't Hug Doug. And so she bought that right away. And then actually Pigs Dig a Road, which is the one that's coming out September, that was the next thing that we sent her, and she signed that too.
Oh, wow.
So Pigs Dig a Road is like my 5th book to come out, but it was actually the 3rd book that was signed.
But there was no option for that with Putnam, the Pigs Dig a Road. You just had this existing relationship that you were sort of leveraging.
No, she did have an option on that. So she had an option. Okay. So Don't Hug Doug, there was an option in that contract that she got to look at the next book. So she looked at Pigs Dig a Road. She bought that. Oh. Then we sent her... Is that what happened? I think that is what happened. And then we
I'm
sent
sorry,
her.
we're interrogating your
I
history
know,
here.
and well, the thing is, like, it matters so much at the time,
Right.
but like
Yeah.
5 or 6 years down the road, you're like, what happened again? I can't remember.
I've moved on.
It
Yeah.
just worked out. It all worked out. So Hurry Little Tortoise, we sent her, and she had already bought the 3 books, and she was like, I think I better stop. So at that point, the option clause ended up being like, moot or whatever. It was, we had fulfilled the option. She said no. So then we could send it out to like a whole bunch of other people.
Oh, okay. I mean, this is a great example though of like, how an option clause can work in your favor, because it's sort of like, it sets the tone for sort of what they're looking for. You build the relationship, and then you just, and then here you are with 3 books. It could have been 4, it sounds like, but she was like, I need to take a minute, otherwise.
My closet is full of Carrie jeans.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the option, like, it's better not to have it, to be honest. I wouldn't recommend it, because you do get kind of locked in. But in that case, it did work out eventually that it was like a good thing. And I mean, you're always building relationships with editors, so I would always send my stuff to her, like, first, probably, at least exclusive for like maybe a couple weeks. Linda would do that, but it's better to have the flexibility of like being able to send to more places if you need to. So.
No, totally. I just wanted to highlight that sometimes
Sometimes it can work out. In this case, it did work out. So.
And just to be explicit about this sort of conventional wisdom about options, like generally speaking, it's unless you've got a solid relationship with an editor, the wisdom goes best to stay away from them, because it can lock down a manuscript for several months at a time, which really can mess up some windows of opportunity for you.
Right. I think the problem for me was so she had the option in the Dozens of Donuts contract on the next book, but she didn't really want to take a look at the next manuscript until we were done like editing the first manuscript, right? Which totally makes sense. I agree. Like, let's focus on one thing at a time. But that basically meant I couldn't submit anything anywhere until we were done with the first manuscript. And that took time. That took, 6 or 7 months, right? To really be done.
It end up being years, I feel like, sometimes, where they're like, look,
exactly. And it could be years. Right, exactly. If they get busy or something and you don't get... I mean, I have a book that... non-announced book, but it was sold in 2021, right? And they're still working on it.
Wow.
It's still being worked on. So, there's an illustrator now, and it's moving along really nicely, but imagine if there was an option clause in that contract from 2021 and I hadn't been able to submit anything since then. Like, that's...
And so again, just to be clear, like in this case of there was no option for the unannounced one that was sold in 2021, but if there had been, it is up to the editor's discretion to say, I'm not ready to look at this yet. I'm going to keep my option. It essentially locks you down, not just for that period where they're actually looking at it, but it locks you down for the entire period of when, up until they're ready to look at it, and then until they've sort of released it into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm all for like developing and maintaining relationships with editors. Having it cast in stone in a contract is, I would not recommend. And like, I mean, I love all the editors that I've worked with and absolutely want to send more stuff to them and work with them again. So, it's not an issue. I don't think it should be an issue, but, I think the publishers, this is what they, they're writing their contracts to benefit them, right? Not you. So.
Well, Carrie, we are like way past the hour, and I just want to say thank you so much for being so generous with your time and so candid with sharing your journey through agenting and querying and sharing the query letter and all the stuff. It's been amazing to have you on, and I'm really excited to read Pigs Dig a Road when it comes out in September. I can't wait for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to share it. I mean, it's as I said, this is like the third book that sold, so it's been a while. Like I've been kind of waiting for this one and excited about it, and it has lots of big trucks, and construction fans will be excited.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Love it. Well, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening this week.
Find all of our episodes and other associated links and information at linktree.com/verseshow.
Or reach out to us on Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see you next verse.
Bye.